Edward. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Here present, my distinguished collaborating colleagues from NAMO, Wangoso, and CDG. We are grateful for your presence. As always, the media is key to what we do as civil society. We cherish the partnership, and we can only hope that as we move on, we consolidate the partnership, the gains we've made to make Liberia a better place for all of us to live and enjoy. This is a joint press statement that is being released by 4 leading civil society organizations in Liberia: NAMBO Partners for Democratic Development, the Center for Transparency and Accountability in Liberia, the Women NGO Secretariat of Liberia, and the Center for Democratic Governance. And these institutions work around a number of issues, including anti-corruption, democracy, local government, gender inclusion, climate justice, among others. Joint press statement by civil society organizations on proposed amendment to the Local Government Act of 2018. CENTAL CSO Partners won proposal to amend Local Government Act LGA of 2018 with June 24, 2025. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the press, fellow Liberians and development partners, the NAMO Partners for Democratic Development, the Center for Transparency in Liberia, the introduction of a draft bill to amend the Local Government Act of 2018 and undermine the viability of the county councils. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, Liberia's governance system has been largely centralized, with local people having little or no say in decisions that affect their livelihoods. This realization led to the timely passage of the Local Government Act, LGA for short, into law in 2018 by former President George Monrovia. The law represents an important attempt at decentralization by reconfiguring local government structures and providing them with powers hereto not granted. Of worthy mention is the county council, whose makeup includes representatives of women, youth, and people living with disabilities, chiefs, elders, and civil society. Amongst others, the county council has the power to approve county development plans, budgets, reports, as well as pass ordinances for the county. This inclusive structure is essential for gender equity, as it ensures that everyone, most especially women and persons with disabilities, have voices in decision-making processes at the local level, an important step in addressing the historical marginalization of women in governance. Despite the passage of the Local Government Act in 2018, amidst loud applause, no meaningful efforts were applied by the then government to make the law operational. It would take 5 years to see movements around implementing the law in 2023, an indication of limited political will to truly give citizens greater roles in local governance. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, this is why we, CENTAL, NAMOT, Wangoso, and CDG have been deeply disturbed by news about a bill introduced in the House of Representatives to amend Section 2.2E and F of the Local Government Act of 2018. The progenitor of the bill, Grand Jide County District 1 Representative Honorable Jeremiah Socket, argues that sections of the law, including 2.2E, which gives authority to the members of the county councils to approve the annual county budget, and 2.2F, which authorizes the county council to approve development plans and its implementation, interferes with legislative oversight powers and must be repealed. The bill has since been forwarded to the House's committees on good governance, Ways, Means and Finance, Internal Affairs, and Judiciary for review. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, while we acknowledge some shortcomings of some members of the county councils, including lack of adequate capacity to thoroughly query different budget line items, we argue that reinstating the legislative caucus in playing controlling roles in local development affairs cannot be a viable alternative for three reasons. One, the legislature is not excluded from local government affairs, but the legislative caucus is properly excluded. Proponents of the proposal to amend the law argued that the powers of the county council interfere with legislative oversight powers and usurp the power of the legislature to approve budgets for the counties. We strongly disagree because all monies are portioned by the county councils to development projects meet legislative approval. Allocations to counties, including county social development funds, are contained in the national budgets approved by the legislature. The budget, as approved by the legislature, also contains specific policy statements on revenue sharing formulas with the counties. How then can one argue that the legislature does not approve or has no oversight? Or should the legislature, after approving the budget, be concerned with approving every granular expenditure related thereto? An affirmative answer would require the legislature to act similarly for other budget line items. Could we reasonably expect the legislature to approve every travel by the president and other officials of government when funding have already been allocated to those travels? Could we expect the legislature to hold sessions to approve budgets of each activity of legislative committees when committees' allotments have been approved with the passing of the national budget? We think not. The collaborating CSOs see no justification for the legislature, including committees and county legislative caucuses, to be involved with approving how county level structures make allotment to development projects when similar oversight will not be extended to other line items in the national budget, as it is clearly impracticable. It is important rather to state that the Local Government Act leaves much greater role for the legislature in ensuring local government oversight. For instance, the legislature must prescribe limits within which county councils can impose local taxes, rates, duties, fees, and fines. Also, the legislature must designate which licenses and operating permits can be issued by councils and must set the ceiling for honorarium payments to county council members. It also has the responsibility within the legislature to transfer administration and collection of property taxes and business license fees to the counties. The range of rates for each category of annual business or operating license fees are also to be established by the legislature. The legislature is also to receive reports of the National Local Government Fiscal Board. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, we note, however, that the real push is that the legislative caucuses should have financial control at the county level, a situation that left counties with low quality, unfinished, and politically motivated projects that only serve the interests of individual lawmakers, legislative caucuses, as well as their cronies. In fact, there is no legal basis for such powers. Legislative caucuses ought to be understood in the context of an association of lawmakers of a particular identity or interest, and not in the context of any legislative authority. For instance, there could exist the Women Legislative Caucus, a political party legislative caucus, youth legislative caucus, or even a county legislative caucus. These are associations that do not carry the weight of legislative authority, although they could pursue interests in the legislature to promote certain agendas linked to the association and the society at large. The legislature can only act in legislative assemblies and not through solo acts of individual members or associations. This is why even in cases where committees perform certain tasks, they are required to report back to plenary to receive legislative imprimatur as provided by the Liberian Constitution. Hence, the idea that county legislative caucuses should be deeply involved with county level government, as was regrettably done in the past, is not only bizarre, but trumps democratic and republican principles and must not be condoned. 2. There is no evidence that members of the legislative caucuses are better placed to approve county plans and budgets than county council members. It is important to recognize that excluding the county councils from this process will represent a major setback to gender equality effort. The county council provides a unique platform for women's participation, which should be strengthened, not rolled back, especially considering that women often have the most insight into community development needs, particularly in health, education, and social protection. The idea of the involvement of legislative caucuses in the development of counties is not new. From 2006, when former President Sirleaf introduced the County Social Development Fund novelty, to 2022, when the Supreme Court overruled caucuses involvement as per the Local Government Act. Lawmakers were the masters of the development funds. Citizens were merely pawns used to accomplish the aims of lawmakers under the guise of citizens' participation in county sittings and other activities, which were unduly controlled. Indeed, memories are still fresh about outcomes associated with the involvement of legislative caucuses. In most cases, corruption and mismanagement characterize the use of county development funds. The Local Government Act, therefore, represents the accumulation of years of advocacy against legislative abuse of local government. It is little wonder, therefore, that the Local Government Act states in its preambular paragraphs that low participation of the citizenry in governance has hindered Liberia's democratization process, in quote, and that citizens desire greater participation in governance to empower them take greater responsibility for their lives and development of their communities. Proponents of caucus inclusion overlook recent history when they declaim county councils. Allegations of inefficiencies and collusion that now arise in relation to county councils arose similarly under the old development regime, having the caucus as the driving force. Hence, if anything, efforts to address any malice beginning to rear its head in the current local government structures should involve improvement of the county councils and addressing impunity rather than finding a queue where it does not exist. It is argued that county council members lack relevant educational credentials to deal with matters as weighty as county plans and budgets. This argument seems plausible at first, since the Local Government Act only requires a county council member to speak in the local language or read and write English. But does any educational qualification exist for members of the legislature? In fact, many legislators have had formal educational beginnings, and their lack of solid credentials did not write them off. Why then should the very people who elected legislators without credentials be barred from participation in local governance due to want of educational credentials? It must be stated, however, that foreseeing the situation that capacity issues might exist, the framers of the law provided that every county council should have a support office comprising of a lawyer and an administrative officer to support the council in such matters. 3. Independence and effectiveness of county councils cannot be remedied by the introduction of the caucus, but through capacity building and accountability mechanisms. It has also been suggested that members elected to the county council are susceptible to influence of county administration and therefore lack the independence envisaged under the new law. The vulnerability, it is argued, stems from limited educational and financial capacity, and that prerequisites provided by county authorities could get county council members to approve budgets and reports without scrutiny. To address this problem, it is said that legislators should assume the approval role, since they, lawmakers, clearly carry higher stature than county authorities. To be clear, in many cases under the former County Social Development Fund regime, the active presence of lawmakers in the local development process overshadowed and intimidated local participation. Citizens often could not speak out and insist on their viewpoints in county settings presided over by the legislative caucus. In the end, most projects conformed to the wishes of lawmakers or legislators rather than delegates at the sitting. There were reports that delegates were manipulated since they were elected by the lawmakers or districts, selected rather by the lawmakers or district commissioners in the first place. The Local Government Act introduction of stakeholder group representation on the council thus is a break with the past. Under the current arrangement, stakeholder groups such as civil society, persons with disabilities, women, youth, chiefs, and others select their representatives to the council, or those certain positions in the stakeholder groups qualify the holder for automatic representation on the council. This provision supports Liberia's commitment under the revised National Gender Policy and the Liberia National Action Plan on Women, Peace, and Security. We emphasize the need for full enforcement of these provisions to safeguard the gains made in women's representation in local governance structures. We welcome the observation that early signs of manipulation are showing despite the new setup. Nonetheless, we hold the view that the thrust of this challenge lies not with just limited capacity and experience, but the seeming absence of stakeholder groups from the metrics. Citizens acting independently or through stakeholder groups must hold their representatives on the council accountable, and if need be, remove them through processes laid down by the Local Government Act. Sensitization would be crucial to raise citizens' awareness in this regard. Also, county council members engaging in corruption and other misconduct should be investigated and prosecuted. The legislature also needs to act quickly to perform its responsibilities under the Local Government Act, as they are critical if the Local Government Act must work. It is almost 2 years since county councils were set up, but honorarium ceilings have not been determined by the legislature in appreciation of their services. Support staff required to be recruited as civil servants are yet to be assigned in many instances. The Civil Service Agency and other relevant ministries and agencies must act accordingly. The way forward. The foregoing provides ample reasons why the Local Government Act must be left undisturbed. Attention must be placed on the full implementation of the law, including through capacity building initiatives and broad-based citizens' engagement. Anything to the contrary will render the Local Government Act meaningless, frustrate years of efforts spent in promoting decentralization, and reverse progress made so far. Giving lawmakers oversight of budget and development approval as recommended could lead to centralized control, political interference, or misalignment with community needs. It could weaken transparency and grassroots participation in local governance processes, sideline local voices and priorities, thus making average Liberians, especially those in rural communities, to have less influence over how development funds are allocated in their own county. It is therefore prudent that we all rally our support for full implementation of the Local Government Act in its current form. Indeed, it would be unfair to draw conclusions about the suitability of the current arrangement when deliberate efforts to get the law operational are hard to come by. Government, civil society, donor partners, and citizens themselves must stand up if decentralization must become a reality in Liberia. From a gender lens, any attempt to alter the existing framework risks dismantling hard-won spaces for women's leadership and community participation. We urge all stakeholders to recognize that decentralization is not only about efficient governance, but also about ensuring that women's voices are not silenced at grassroots level. We, therefore, call for the withdrawal of the bill and for energies and resources to be redirected to supporting an effective and efficient local government structures across the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Quite exhaustive. Now it's your turn to